Washington, D.C. could join Hollywood as the next site of potentially multiple sexual assault and sexual harassment charges. Today, the House held a sexual harassment committee meeting where people came forward and talked about their experience, either as representatives, senators, also as interns, people staffing for many of the offices in D.C. And some of those experiences are scary on their own, but could certainly come with some legal charges in the near future, perhaps. Here is a mashup of those stories.
That when I was a freshman legislator in my 20s in Missouri, as a member of the House of Representatives, I went up on the dais to ask the Speaker of the House for advice on how to get my first bill out of committee, and he asked me if I brought my knee pads. That's one example.
This is about a member who is here now. I don't know who it is, but somebody who I trust told me this situation. This member asked a staffer to bring them over some materials to their residence, and the young staffer, as a young woman, went there and was greeted with a member in a towel, who was a male, who then invited her in. At that point, he decided to expose himself. She left, and then she quit her job. She left, she found another job.
Yeah, I mean, when I was an intern, I learned to avoid elevators because elevators were when you were captured. And so after one unfortunate incident in the elevator, I began taking the stairs everywhere I went in the state capitol when I was there as a college student.
I was eager to present a proposal to him that I had been working on, and I did so in his office. It was just he and I. And as I got up to leave, he stopped me and said, "My God, you just look amazing today. Just really stunning. Would you mind twirling for me?"
Twirling, like spinning around in a circle.
Yes, I had a dress suit on at the time, and I was stunned, but I was 22 years old. I was inexperienced, and I respected him. He was my member. He was doing a lot of good work in Congress, and I complied. I didn't know what else to do. I was confused after the incident. I went to sit down at my desk and just kind of regroup when shortly thereafter I received a phone call from our Washington office saying, "Well, Rebecca, congratulations. I don't know what you did, but Gary called and said that you needed to have a bonus immediately." And I was so furious at the time because I knew exactly what I did. I twirled.
In fact, there are two members of Congress, Republican and Democrat, right now, who have been subject to review or not have been subject to review, but have engaged in sexual harassment. These harasser propositions such as, are you going to be a good girl, to perpetrators exposing their genitals, to victims having their private parts grabbed on the House floor.
And so Jackie Speier, right there at the end, also said that when she was just starting her career in politics, the chief of staff in her office sexually assaulted her. And so it feels to me, and I think to a lot of people, like this is just the beginning. Like we know that what leads to this sort of behavior is unbridled power. And Hollywood had that. Mm-hmm. It had the culture that protected these people and allowed this sort of thing to go on. And we know that stuff like this happens in D.C. And I mean, these are not simply like, hey, something happened decades ago. People currently serving have sexually harassed and assaulted people. And I think that this is the moment where this sort of thing could come out. And I would not be surprised that, and there's precedent for this, like Packwood back in the 90s, that people lose their careers, understandably, justifiably so, because of what they have done once people start coming forward. For all we know, there are reporters compiling these stories into bombshell reports that in a week or a month or a year are going to take down people.
Look,
and DC needs it.
I have no doubt that the identities of the people that were recently accused will somehow be leaked. We'll figure it out, right? But this is something that's been going on in our current Congress that apparently some members of Congress have known about. And just think about how deeply rooted fear is when it comes to identifying these individuals. Now, I'm not criticizing them for not wanting to come forward and identify them. That is their decision to make, right? But at the same time, it's so important to hold them accountable and call them out, because if you don't, then the behavior continues. They think that they can continuously victimize other people without any consequences because they recognize their power and they recognize the fear that others have in identifying who they are. So again, I've said this a billion times when it comes to all of these sexual assault stories that have been coming out. I don't care if it's a Democrat or a Republican. Their political ideology is completely irrelevant to me when it comes to this type of predatory behavior.
Yeah,
it's the setup, it's the makeup of the system.
Yeah.
So of course, again, and there's a lot of similarities between Hollywood and DC. When I was there the first couple of times I went, and I had friends that worked, it was during the W's administration, and she was like, oh yeah, politicians around here, it's like Hollywood. She went to school with me out here in LA. So she had a direct comparison. And she goes, they're like celebrities. When they're approached or when they're recognized out somewhere, they're like, yeah, you know who I am. The same way you'd see a celebrity maybe. Mm-hmm. And then they take it in, but then they look around like, I'm so much of this. So when they know they have power over certain people and they wield it, there's similarities. It's just human nature that people like to do, asshole human nature, in taking advantage of people to get their rocks off whichever way they'd like to. And they've been getting away with it since forever, obviously. Yeah. And this is what's going to finally change it. The system allowed it to happen. So people who were victims of it, I mean, the woman was Rebecca Weir, and then she felt horrible about it was a normal thing that just happens. Yeah. And then she's like, suddenly she has a bonus. And then at the end of that, she also said, and I needed it. So everyone knows that they barely pay folks, then they use them for their own gratification, and the system just keeps moving.
Yeah. Yeah, and we know, I mean, one of the reasons that initially there wasn't much done about the allegations of those in Hollywood is because there's huge sums of money on the line. Like, Harvey Weinstein's power isn't like a physical power, it's a financial and influence power. And every one of those people that were alluded to in the video you just saw, they have not only the power theoretically over people's careers, like Harvey Weinstein and some of the other people accused do, but they have literal government power, influence over those in the executive branch. I mean, the people coming out and accusing Roy Moore said that they didn't want to come forward because he was the DA, he was a judge, he was influential. Think about a senator, think about a representative. And there will be defenders of them, the same way there are still defenders of Roy Moore, because a lot of people will say, sure, I would love it if people weren't getting sexually assaulted, but I gotta have my majority in Congress, and I'm not gonna jeopardize that just to stand by my supposed principles. And so as more of these stories come out, and I really hope that reporters are digging into it, expect that the defenders will be there. And everybody who comes out and makes allegations is putting everything on the line for it. Because just like with Roy Moore, they will stop at nothing to destroy you.
And as what Anna said, Republican, Democrats. So everyone else watching, be prepared to be disappointed. And if you're right, and these names will come out more, be prepared to be disappointed in some of the names you will hear. There can be representatives, there can be senators, and there can be people that you liked, and things that you liked, what they've done and legislated. But they still, many, as we're hearing, have done this stuff. So be prepared and don't be ready to defend them just because you like them, what they seem to be.
And it's likely to be from both Republicans and Democrats.
Membership helps fund the Young Turks. You know one great thing about that? That means we're not accountable to anyone but you guys. That's why we're strong together, because we built this show around you. Come build it even bigger and better at tytnetwork.com/join.